We have been married. My husband just does not want to be in the spotlight.
Soon you will have been married 50 years.
Well, actually, we met 50 years ago this May. We've been married for 48 years.
For decades, Dolly Parton kept the truth about her marriage to Carl Dean hidden. Fans barely saw him. Rumors swirled that he didn't exist, and Dolly laughed it off. Until now. At 79, she's finally revealing shocking secrets. A real-life Jolene, a heartbreaking betrayal, Carl's last ever public appearance, and even a near-tragic moment that almost ended it all. But why now? And what was Carl hiding all these years? Stay tuned, because once you hear what Dolly just admitted, you'll never see their love story the same way again. Unexpected beginnings and the fateful day at Wishy-Washy. It was a hot summer afternoon in 1964 when a determined 18-year-old Dolly Parton stepped off a Greyhound bus in Nashville, her eyes wide with dreams and her suitcase filled with songs. Fresh from the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, Dolly had big plans to chase stardom in the heart of country music. Yet little did she know, within hours of arriving, she would meet the man who would quietly define her entire life. A man who remained so mysterious, some fans joked he might not even exist. Who was this reclusive figure Dolly called the love of her life? And why did he refuse to ever step into the spotlight? And why is Dolly, now 79 years old, finally choosing to reveal the shocking truth about their marriage after his passing? That unforgettable day started quite innocently at a modest laundromat in Nashville, amusingly called Wishy-Washy. There stood Dolly Parton, barely 18 and a bit out of her element, folding clothes under the sweltering sun. Suddenly, Carl Dean, then 21, drove by in his pickup truck, stopping abruptly to tease her gently. "You're gonna get sunburned standing out here like that." Dolly, quick-witted and fiery even then, fired back with a playful remark. "Well, what's it to you?" Instead of driving off, Carl smiled warmly, charmed by her sass. That moment sparked a conversation, one that stretched on for hours, laying the groundwork for a relationship either saw coming. Carl later admitted that his first thought upon seeing Dolly was strikingly clear and confident. "I'm gonna marry that girl." This might sound like a line straight out of a Hollywood romance, yet Carl Dean was anything but Hollywood. He would eventually become legendary for avoiding fame as passionately as Dolly embraced it, which begs the question, how did their relationship survive almost 60 years under such polar opposite lifestyles? And why did Carl choose to stay almost completely hidden from public view, even when married to one of the most famous women in the world? Their early romance was charmingly uncomplicated, yet quietly rebellious. In fact, their very first date wasn't at a glamorous restaurant or extravagant event. Instead, Carl took Dolly home to meet his parents, followed by burgers at McDonald's, a simplicity that spoke volumes about their shared values. Soon after, Carl was enlisted in the Army, forcing the couple to continue their blossoming relationship through heartfelt letters. Dolly described this separation as emotionally challenging but critical, a test that revealed their bond was much deeper than mere youthful attraction. Their decision to marry came 2 years after their initial meeting, but it was not without controversy. Dolly's label was alarmed that marriage might harm her burgeoning career. They advised her to wait, warning her that tying the knot could halt her momentum. But Dolly, ever the strong-willed young woman, quietly defied them. She and Carl eloped secretly on Memorial Day weekend, 1966, in Ringgold, Georgia, with only her mother, a pastor, and his wife present to witness the ceremony. Afterward, the couple didn't jet off on a luxurious honeymoon. Instead, they dropped Dolly's mother off at the bus station and went straight back to their jobs the next day as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Even in marriage, Carl chose the quiet road, attending exactly one public event with Dolly, a 1966 awards dinner where he famously declared afterward, "Don't you ever ask me to go to another one of them dang things again." From then on, Carl vanished from public view, becoming a living mystery while Dolly's star rose to unimaginable heights. His reclusiveness made their marriage a source of endless speculation. Fans often joked that Carl might just be a figment of Dolly's imagination, a character she had invented as part of her colorful persona. Yet Dolly often hinted that Carl's choice to stay hidden actually strengthened their marriage. With each passing year, the questions only grew louder. Who exactly was Carl Dean? How could someone married to a superstar manage to stay invisible for nearly 6 decades? And what shocking truths did Dolly finally reveal about her husband, now that Carl Dean has passed away at age 82? Carl Dean's passing, the affair, depression, and near tragedy. The world was left stunned when, in March of 2025, Dolly Parton finally broke her silence about the passing of her husband, Carl Dean. For nearly 6 decades, he had remained an enigma, rarely photographed, never making public appearances, and avoiding the limelight at all costs. But now, after his quiet death at the age of 82, Dolly was speaking up in a way she never had before. And what she revealed was nothing short of shocking. Her public statement was simple, yet heartbreaking. "Carl and I spent many wonderful years together. Words can't do justice to the love we shared for over 60 years. I will always love you." But as fans soon discovered, there was much more to this story than anyone had ever imagined. One of the most unexpected and painful admissions came when Dolly finally addressed a chapter of her life she had long kept hidden: her affair of the heart. In the early 1980s, at the height of her career, Dolly found herself emotionally entangled with another man. She never named him, but she admitted that the connection was powerful, dangerous, and nearly catastrophic for her marriage. She described it not as a physical betrayal, but as something even more devastating, an emotional one. She had fallen in love with someone who was not her husband. It was something she never thought she would do, and the guilt nearly consumed her. For Dolly, the emotional distance from Carl during this time was unbearable. She had always been a fiercely independent woman, and her career was pulling her in 1,000 different directions. Carl, ever the private and reserved man, never tried to interfere, never tried to control her. But in doing so, he had also stepped back, giving Dolly the space she needed, but perhaps too much of it. She was lonely, overwhelmed, and emotionally vulnerable. And then, this mysterious man entered her life, someone who made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. The weight of her guilt crushed her. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. And for the first time in her life, Dolly Parton, known for her radiant smile and endless energy, felt utterly hopeless. Her depression spiraled, and it soon manifested physically. Her weight fluctuated drastically. She suffered from health complications that were never fully disclosed to the public. And then came the moment that nearly ended everything. Dolly has only spoken about this incident a handful of times, but the details remain chilling. Alone in her bedroom, she sat with a loaded gun in her lap, staring at it for what felt like hours. The thoughts running through her mind were dark, overwhelming, and unrelenting. She had let down the person she loved the most. She had allowed herself to become someone she barely recognized. The shame was unbearable. In that moment, she truly believed there was no way forward. And just as she was about to make a decision she could never take back, she felt something at her feet. It was her little dog, Popeye. The tiny animal had somehow sensed what was happening and had run up the stairs, nudging her leg, looking up at her with wide, innocent eyes. In that instant, something inside her broke. Dolly has since described it as divine intervention. She dropped the gun. She broke down in tears. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. But the road back was not easy. The guilt of her emotional affair lingered, and so did the deep wounds it had left on her marriage. Carl, ever the quiet and patient man, did not rage, did not demand answers, did not try to punish her for what had happened. Instead, he did something much harder. He stayed, and in staying, he gave Dolly something that no one else could: the chance to heal. She threw herself into her work, channeling her pain into her music. But more importantly, she also threw herself back into her marriage. She realized, in a way she never had before, just how much Carl meant to her. He wasn't just her husband. He was her anchor, her safe place, the one person who had never tried to change her or control her, the one who had loved her exactly as she was. And so, she made a promise to herself. She would never take him for granted again. From that moment on, their marriage became even stronger. They found a rhythm that worked, one built on trust, mutual respect, and an understanding that they were two very different people who had chosen to walk through life together. Carl never stepped into the public eye again, except for one final time. It happened on a quiet afternoon in 2016 when Dolly and Carl privately renewed their vows for their 50th wedding anniversary. This was Carl's last ever public appearance, albeit a carefully controlled one. Dolly wore a stunning white gown, and Carl, true to himself, kept it simple in a suit. There were no flashing cameras, no reporters, no grand spectacle. Just the two of them, reaffirming the love that had survived against all odds. And then, just as quietly as he had always lived, Carl faded from view. In his final years, he remained at their home in Nashville, far from the public eye, just as he had always wanted. Dolly, ever the devoted wife, was by his side. And when he passed away in March of 2025, she honored him in the only way she knew how, with music. She released a song, If You Hadn't Been There, a heartbreaking tribute to the man who had stood beside her for nearly 60 years, with lyrics like, "If you hadn't been there, well, who would I be? You always see the best in me." It was clear that, even in death, Carl was still the greatest influence in her life. And for the first time ever, Dolly Parton, who had spent decades protecting the details of her marriage, was ready to share her truth. The real Jolene. In recent months, more secrets about Dolly Parton and Carl Dean's relationship have finally come to light, revealing a side to their love story that even the most dedicated fans never knew. With Carl's passing, Dolly has begun sharing more candid details about their marriage, lifting the curtain on some of the mysteries that surrounded them for decades. And perhaps one of the most surprising revelations? Dolly Parton, despite her confidence, charisma, and larger-than-life persona, was once deeply jealous of another woman. A woman who, to this day, remains the inspiration behind one of the most famous songs in country music history, Jolene. For years, fans have speculated about the origins of Jolene, one of Dolly Parton's most iconic songs. The haunting melody, the desperation in her voice, and the almost pleading nature of the lyrics all pointed to something deeply personal. And now, Dolly has confirmed what many had suspected. Jolene was based on a very real woman who, for a time, had caught Carl Dean's attention. It all started in the early years of their marriage. Carl, ever the private and grounded man, still lived life as a regular Tennessee guy despite being married to a rising star. He ran errands, worked his asphalt business, and handled the day-to-day tasks of life without giving a second thought to Dolly's growing fame. But there was one errand in particular that seemed to take up more of his time than it should have: his visits to the bank. Dolly noticed it almost immediately. Every time Carl went to the bank, he would return home in an unusually cheerful mood. He was chatty, smiling, even humming a tune under his breath. And then she found out why. At the bank was a stunning red-headed teller, a woman with bright green eyes, flawless skin, and a smile that seemed just a little too friendly. She was young, attractive, and most importantly, very interested in Carl. At first, Dolly laughed it off. Carl was loyal, devoted, and uninterested in fame or flattery. But then she started noticing the subtle changes: how often Carl was going to the bank, how he seemed just a little too eager to run errands. And that's when she felt it. Jealousy. The kind of jealousy that makes your stomach twist and your mind race with questions you don't want to ask. Instead of confronting Carl, she did what she does best. She wrote a song. Jolene was born out of that nagging fear, that unspoken worry, that maybe, just maybe, this beautiful redhead could take her husband away. Dolly later admitted that she wasn't just writing a song, she was sending a message. She was putting her emotions into words before they could fester into something worse. But did the real Jolene ever hear the song? And if so, how did she react? Over the years, Dolly has been asked time and time again if she ever spoke to the mysterious bank teller after writing the song. And while she has never publicly confirmed the woman's identity, she did once mention that Jolene, or at least the woman who inspired her, was very aware of the song. In fact, after it became a massive hit, Dolly speculated that the real-life Jolene probably loved the attention, knowing she had been the inspiration for one of country music's biggest songs. But one has to wonder, what was Carl's reaction when he realized he had become the center of such a dramatic musical confession? According to Dolly, Carl was both amused and slightly embarrassed by the whole thing. He insisted that the flirtation had been harmless, that he had never truly been interested in the red-headed teller. And whether or not Dolly fully believed him, one thing was certain: the song worked. Whatever Jolene had thought she was doing, she didn't succeed. Carl stayed. The visits to the bank became less frequent, and their marriage moved forward. The secrets behind their long marriage. One of Dolly's most famous pieces of marriage advice is simple but shocking to some. Stay gone. She's said it for years, often with a laugh, but there's more truth to it than many realized. Unlike traditional marriages where couples spend most of their time together, Dolly and Carl did the exact opposite. Dolly was constantly on the road, performing, filming, and expanding her empire, while Carl stayed home, running his asphalt business and avoiding the spotlight. And according to Dolly, this was the key to their success. She once joked in an interview, "I stay gone enough to keep it good. When we see each other, it's special." The long stretches of time apart made their reunion sweeter, their conversations more meaningful, and their relationship more exciting. But what happened when they were together? That's where things get interesting. Behind closed doors, Carl Dean had a wicked sense of humor, something that very few people ever got to witness. He loved pulling pranks, particularly on Dolly, and over the years, he developed a hilarious habit of pretending to be someone else when guests came over. Imagine this: you're visiting Dolly Parton's home, expecting to meet her famous husband. and instead, you're greeted by an older man in work clothes, looking like the hired help. Carl would introduce himself as the gardener or the maintenance guy, keeping a completely straight face while guests awkwardly nodded, too polite to question why this man wasn't acting like the millionaire husband of a country music legend. Some visitors didn't realize the joke until much later, when Dolly would burst out laughing and expose Carl's trickery. But Carl wasn't just a jokester. He was also a deeply romantic man, even if he kept it private. While he avoided grand gestures or public displays of affection, he had his own ways of showing Dolly how much he loved her. And one of the most touching traditions he maintained for decades involved something as simple as flowers. Every year, when the first yellow daffodils bloomed on their property, Carl would pick a small bouquet and leave them for Dolly with a handwritten note. He didn't make a big fuss about it, didn't expect a thank you. He just did it because it was their thing. Over the years, it became something that Dolly looked forward to. A quiet little reminder that no matter how far she traveled, Carl was always thinking of her. Of course, Dolly wasn't the only one on the receiving end of romantic surprises. She had a few tricks up her sleeve as well, some of them much more shocking than a bouquet of flowers. And nothing proves that more than what she did for Carl's 79th birthday. Now, most wives would plan a quiet dinner or a heartfelt gift for their husband's birthday. But Dolly? She did something completely unexpected. She recreated one of her most infamous looks, the iconic Playboy bunny outfit from her 1978 magazine cover. At 75 years old, Dolly slipped into the same signature black corset, bunny ears, and bow tie, just to surprise Carl. And his reaction? According to Dolly, he loved it. She later joked, "He always thought that was the cutest thing. I thought, well, I'll surprise him and do it again. And I did it. I have the photos to prove it." It was an over-the-top, playful gesture that captured exactly what made their relationship so special: love, humor, and a complete lack of concern for what anyone else thought. They didn't need to be attached at the hip, constantly proving their love to the public. They knew what they had was real, and that was enough. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Click the next video for more exciting content.